Assalamu alaikum, everyone. We're just going to wait a few more minutes for people to show up and then we'll start shortly.
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Saab, I think you should start.
Walaikum assalam. Nihal is here.
Nihal is here. Nihal.
Assalamu alaikum. Should we go ahead, inshallah?
Yes,
Please.
I think so.
Alrighty.
You have 9 people, 8 people.
Sure. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wal aqibatu lil muttaqin wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulih nabiyil kareem wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على طاعتك يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. اللهم ثبتنا عند الموت بلا إله إلا الله. آمين يا رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته, everyone. Glad to be back for another week of our reflections from Iqbal. I look forward to this, every week. I teach a lot of classes throughout the week, but this one I really enjoy teaching, and learning from you all and discussing with you all. So today we're going to be speaking about the second stanza from Shikwa, and we'll also discuss what we had gone over last week. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring that up real quick, and then we'll get into the new stuff for today. Okay. So last week we began talking about the Shikwa, right? We began to go into it, and we roughly did what you see here, right? And during that time period, what did we actually cover? What did we go over? We went over how the Shikwa plays itself out. How does the Shikwa, what does this poem seek to ask from people? What does it seek to convey to Muslims? And we see all of this right in front of us, right? We went over the different words that exist. We went over why those words exist. We went over what the premise behind the Shikwa was. We also went over some in-depth words as to how and why Allama Iqbal uses certain words, why he uses certain phrases, right? So in doing all of that, what do we begin to see? We begin to see how much of what Allama Iqbal is attempting to do is to get people to say and do what? It's to get people to understand things in a way that will give them a shock factor, right? So with that shock factor, what do we end up seeing? We end up seeing that people may have reacted in a way in which they weren't used to, right? That when they are reacting in that manner and in a way that they're not used to, then it's something that leads them to do what? Say things which they don't understand what they're saying, because they're merely used to seeing and hearing whatever they're used to seeing and hearing. So when we see that aspect, when we understand that aspect, when we see why Allama Iqbal is starting off with this idea of what why should I choose to be a loser, right? And we, some of the words we went over, or somebody, why should I choose to be someone who cannot come to understand what their pure potential is, right? So that's what Allama Iqbal is going over and mentioning to us and saying that, you're having a trouble in understanding what your true sense of belonging looks like. Well, now you need to understand what Islam is supposed to do for you. What is it that you need to do to become a better person, so that you can, at the end, do what? At the end, be someone who is open to understanding, who is a person that understands what their basically relevance to God is, how they need to be in a state where, okay, sure, you need to be a certain way, you need to pray salah, you need to do this, and you need to do that. But at the end, what is it that you're supposed to now understand and do? Well, that comes later. But what is my relationship to God, right? What is my relationship to God? And if we don't understand what our relationship to God is, then we're missing out on the point of our being. We're missing out on the point of what it means to be a Muslim. And you're going to see this throughout a recurring theme in Iqbal, is that people are basically shells. And to be a shell is not something good, because shells, without what's inside, number one, are weak. They're weak objects. And if you have a weak object, it'll break. And then number two, the purpose of just carrying around a shell doesn't help you. So you need to actualize who you are and what you're supposed to do and be. So we went over that. We went over that aspect. And now we're going to get into another aspect of this discussion, going over aspects of complaining, right? Aspects of pain that may be present within complaining. So we're going to see that, inshallah, in today's lesson, which I'm going to bring up. Create new note. Just bringing this up. poetry. All right. All right, screen share again. I don't know what's happened. Sorry. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this. Dr. Saab, if you'd like to read, you're more than welcome to, inshallah, and then we can discuss it from there.
Let me open my mic and let me read this.
Sure.
Iqbal says, है बजा शेवाए तस्लीम में मशहूर हैं हम, किस्साए दर्द सुनाते हैं कि मजबूर हैं हम, सादे खामोश हैं फरियाद से मामूर हैं हम, नाला आता है अगर लब पे तो माजूर हैं हम, ए खुदा शिकवाए अरबाब वफा भी सुन ले, खूगरे हम से थोड़ा सा गिला भी सुन ले.
Doctor, do you have anything to add to what I had mentioned before we get into this?
What?
Do you have anything to any?
I would make it simple.
Yeah.
ये है बजा हम शेवाए तस्लीम में मशहूर हैं, मजबूर हैं हम इसलिए किस्साए दर्द सुनाते हैं.
Yeah.
हम फरियाद से मामूर हैं लेकिन सादे खामोश हैं.
Yeah.
अगर लब पे नाला आता है तो माजूर हैं हम. तो आगे तो वाला तो बड़ा आसान है. अरबाब वफा से ए खुदा शिकवा भी सुन ले,
Yeah.
थोड़ा सा गिला भी खूगरे हमसे सुन ले.
Yeah. Yeah.
जी.
Got it. Okay, let's get into this. So, hai baja, right? Hai baja, shewai tasneem mein mashhoor hain hum. What would be the best translation for hai baja?
It's true.
It's true, right?
Yes, yeah, it's true. है बजा mean अपनी जगह पे ये बात सही है. But ja means on its place.
Yeah.
On its face, this is true. But we say this is correct. You know, it's true.
Yeah.
Granted, you can also say granted.
Yeah. It's granted, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What is granted? Shewai taslim, in which the way I had translated this was habitual obedience or constant obedience.
The habit, huh? The habit. Sheva is the habit of taslim. Taslim
Yeah.
is saying.
And taslim, right, in Arabic, we know that it comes from Islam, right? So the idea of taslim is submission, right? It comes from the
Submission,
same
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So we're constantly submitting, we know this, right? We constantly believe without question. We constantly worship without question.
Amanna wa saddaqna would be the perfect.
Yeah, manna wa sadadna, exactly, right? We
Yeah.
believe and that's it.
Yeah.
But at the end, there is something that we need to keep in mind. You know, I was listening to a lecture earlier yesterday, and it was a very interesting point. In the Quran, Allah on many occasions will actually put people, or rather hold people accountable because they don't use their minds to come to a rational conclusion, right? So if we say Islam is something that is true, then we know that we utilized some rationale basically to come to a conclusion. But the difference is that the word aql that we use to come to a conclusion, it actually means to restrain as opposed to just let roam free. So the Muslim is someone that learned to restrain their aql, because the aql by nature can go in many different directions, right? You can go to many different possibilities. But when we begin to understand our worldview as the mind is not something that's just chasing after possibilities, it's not doing that. The mind is where it's at, and it's observing and examining, and then it's taking things that one can observe and make sense out of. So here, right, Shewai Tasneem, there's a sense of just constant obedience without thinking, right? You're just always doing things without thinking twice about it. And that's what we've become famous for, right? Shaywa taslim mashhur hai hum. That we've become famous because we just simply obey. And yes, there is that sense. For example, you have in the Quran, sami'na wa ata'na, like we've heard and we've obeyed, right? But just from hearing, it doesn't logically make sense that you can say ata'na, that we have obeyed, if you don't think about what you've heard, right? Sami'na, sure, but it's assumed that this person has used their mind to come to a conclusion. So now that aspect is also being brought into question. So in the tone here that Iqbal is utilizing, right? He's saying it's true, right? We're known for this. And now in the next upcoming lines, we're going to see that, right? Mashhur hona means to be famous, right? You're famous for something. You're known for something, right? And then he also says, yes,
yeah, we are believed to be. He's not taking credit for it. He's basically saying that we are known in the world to be the ones who totally submit without questioning you.
Yeah.
Here, Shewai Taslim is without questioning you. We go amanna wa saddaqna. Abhi isme amal ki baat nahi aa rahi.
Yeah.
If aa rahi hai, considering this to be the truth.
Right.
Whatever you say, we believe without question. That's what it is, Taslim.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Then afterwards, he says, qissa dard sunate, right? The qissa dard, which is your story of pain, like what you have to say. Qissa dard sunate hain ke majboor hain hum, right? Because we need to say this because we have no other way to do it. We are compelled because we have to speak of our pain, right? We have to say why we are in this state. Like there's no other way for us to do it. And it's a roughly straightforward idea, right? Majboor, the word, it just means, it's also an Arabic word. It means to be compelled or forced, right? And qissa dard, a story of pain, right? Story of pain. And I'm highlighting this just so you can keep some themes in mind, right? If you want to learn vocabulary, you're more than welcome to. And for those of you that know Urdu, maybe minus shewai tasneem, you know all these other words, and maybe baja, right? But you know all these words. But we want to keep these little tabs in our mind. That's the most important thing, right? So we see that aspect. So he's saying that though we are prone to obedience, our pain is causing us to speak, right? Our pain is causing us to speak. You know, when you're like a manager or something, or you're a project manager, or you're a boss, generally speaking, your employees and those that work under you are not going to sit there and question everything that you bring out, right? They're not going to sit there and question every single point that is brought up to you. If anything, that will show that if they have to sit there and complain every moment, they probably may not last as an employee in the company that they're in. But now we see here that Iqbal is writing and saying that, we're going to do this, we're going to make this complaint, right? Because we're just so filled with pain. And not only that, it's not just one or two pains, right? He says specifically, qissa dard. A qissa is a story, right? In Arabic too, qissa is a story. And it's interesting because the word qassa yaqussu in Arabic, it actually is a very interesting word. There's many words. There's a few words for like stories in Arabic, but the word qissa actually means that you're following in the footsteps of someone. Like if you're on a beach and you're someone that's taking footsteps, those footsteps will be made by one person and another person is going to follow in them. Meaning what? Like if you see footsteps in the sand, it's not just one or two footsteps. You see a trail of them. They'll go on until the person leaves the beach. So similarly, the story of pain here, qissa dard, is not going to be one incident or two incidents or three incidents. Those incidents will be what you can see beyond, just like you can see those footsteps in the sand. So qissa dard sunate hain ke majboor hain. We just feel compelled. We have no other way to go, right? We have no other way to go. We have no other place to be. There's one of the du'as that we actually recite before we go to sleep is Allahumma la malja'a wa la manja minka illa ilayk. There is no refuge from you except to you, right? So that's also why he's making this complaint, is that he's saying it to Allah, right? He's saying it to God himself. And now we're going to see what the nature of that looks like. He'll say in the next line, Saaz-e khamosh hain, faryad se ma'mur hain hum. Right? Saaz-e khamosh hain. Saaz-e khamosh means that something that is filled with the ability to speak, or it speaks, or it has the ability to say, but it's being muzzled, it's being muffled, and it's not able to it's not able to bring it out. So when we see this Saaz-e khamosh hain, faryad se ma'mur hain. Right? Faryad is what? Your shout, right? Your cry out, right? Your beseeching, right? So that's the main point that he's bringing up, that Saaz-e khamosh hain. There are things that have to be said at this point, right? But those things are not being said, right? Things have to be said, but they're not being said. Saaz-e khamosh hain. So when things need to be said, you're supposed to say them. When things don't need to be said, you don't say them. So he's saying that Saaz-e khamosh, and there are things which need to be said that I guess aren't being said. Faryad se ma'mur hain hum, right? And we are basically faryad se ma'mur hain, right? Faryad is like a scream. Dr. what would your thoughts be here?
Saaz-e khamosh is an orchestra that is on the stage. It's not being played. It has a whole lot of music in it, but since it's not being played, it's called Saaz-e khamosh. We have a whole lot within us, but we have not said that. We are like that orchestra, like the instruments that are sitting there on the stage, not being played. Faryad is the complaint.
Right.
Ma'mur is full to the brim.
Yeah.
Filled to the brim. We have so much complaint within us that now we must play it out. That's what Saaz-e khamosh is ready to play. So we are actually filled with complaint, and like a orchestra that is not being played, we are quiet.
Yeah.
That's the concept that he's trying to convey here.
So it's interesting. Saaz-e khamosh. Is that specific to?
If you have a guitar,
Yeah.
unless you play it, you don't know what it's going to say. Flute,
Right.
especially. Flute is quiet, it's sitting there, but when it speaks, my God, it can break your heart.
Right.
It,
So you're
it has
thinking like this thing has so much potential, yet it's not utilizing its potential.
No, it's basically saying that he's talking about here, the subject matter is them, himself.
Yeah.
He says, we are filled with complaints, and like the orchestra that has a whole lot to deliver, and yet it's not being played, so you haven't heard what we have to say.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's what it comes down to too, right? Saaz-e khamosh, where you're in such a state, right, where you have the ability to be heard, you have the ability to play, but yet you're being
but you already, not only the ability, but you already have put the tune into it, you have already chosen the words for it, you have everything is ready, and we are now filled with that complaint.
Yeah.
But to you, it appears that we are not saying anything, but you don't realize how many rhythms and rhymes and how many musical compositions we have in us. And all of that is the complaint he means. Because the next verse will open it up when he says, Nala aata hai agar lab pe. When it comes to our lips, which means now we are overflowing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sounds good. So they're overflowing with this. They're ready, right? As Dr. said,
Exactly.
It's been tuned. It's the if you have like a violin, it's been tuned. The strings are there. They're not going to rip. The bow is there. So what are you waiting on?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We cannot wait anymore. That's what he's saying. We cannot wait anymore because everything is ready to go.
Yeah. So he's saying here, Nala aata hai agar lab pe to mazur hain hum. Because we've been prepped, we're ready. So if something is going to be said, Nala aata hai, right? Nala is a sound of pain, right? It's a sound of,
it's a crying sound. It's a
crying sound, right?
Yeah.
A sound of pain. And not only that, one thing that I was thinking about was a person, let's say, who is very sad. Sometimes you get angry, but your anger, it's like anger and sadness combined. So you're so angry that you want to cry, right? And that was what I was picturing here, because like you're so filled with emotion, your tears are coming out. When you're speaking, your words sound like, you're about to cry, right? And you can see this person on the brim. Nala aata hai agar lab pe to mazur hain hum. That if those words, if that's coming to our lips, it's because like hum mazur hain, like please just excuse us, because there's no other way to see this. There's no other way to understand this, right? So mazur hona generally means to be what? To be like
having an uzr. Uzr is an excuse,
right? So please excuse.
Having an excuse. There is a reason. Yeah. We do have a genuine reason why we are crying that way. Uzr is mazur is the one who's under the uzr.
Yeah. So it's a sense of having an excuse but
makes it genuine. In other words, he does have a genuine reason to cry.
Yeah.
Make the complaint.
Yeah, still saying to mazur hain hum. They just excuse us, but this is what it is. Saaz khamosh hain, faryad se maamur hain hum, right? Nala aata hai agar ye nala aata agar lab pe to mazur hain hum. Like I am filled to this brim with emotion. I have these complaints. I'm tuned and ready to go. It's literally oozing out of my eyes, and it's oozing out of my words. It's oozing out of my heart. So if you are hearing this, then just please be prepared and please do not mind and excuse me from what I'm about to say.
Yes, I add the word justified for it also. Uzr gives you the justification to make that.
Yeah.
Oh, you see, so
yeah, ma'zur actually in Arabic is really interesting, the context that it's used in. It's similar. It refers to udhr, so something which, you need to be excused for. So someone who is ma'zur an salah, somebody who's excused from prayer, for example. It's because maybe
No, he's not excused. He has a genuine reason not to.
Justified.
Yeah, justified not to. If you say that, then this whole concept opens up what Iqbal is trying to say.
Yeah. So he's providing the justification for it.
We are justified.
Yeah.
When this cry comes to our lips, we are justified to really bring it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. Beautiful.
Actually, I'm just going to remove the excuse word because that's the difference.
Yeah. That is a
justified. I think is just a better word
yes.
In essence.
We have a good reason for it.
Yeah. So. साज़े खामोश हैं फरियाद से मामूर हैं हम नाला आता है अगर लब पे तो माजूर हैं हम. So he also has that sense of confidence there, and that because we are ready to go, we will say what we have to say.
Exactly.
ए खुदा शिकवाए अरबाब वफा भी सुन ले, खोगर हमसे थोड़ा सा गिला भी सुन ले. Right? ए खुदा, oh God, oh Allah, Shikwaye Arbabe Wafa, right? The complaint of Arbabe Wafa, which is what? The complaint of Arbabe Wafa referring to these people, right? Those who are, I guess, in a state of difficulty, or those who are, you could say, because Wafa here is also in reference to loyalty, right? So those people who are loyal to, who are faithful to you, but
who are known and certified to be your loyals. They are always loyal and carrying out anything and everything you say. Arbabe Wafa. Arbab is the people. Wafa is the one who are actually known for and habitual of following everything that their friend or their whosoever they are working with says to do. They can dependably do it. They are known for it. So, that's what it.
Yeah, or I can see those who are your loyalists, or those who basically follow everything to your T. They don't question it.
Yeah, exactly.
Other Urdu words like tumhare yaar, or those people who are tumhare wafadar, those people who you're confidants, whatever you want to use for that.
No, the arbab wafa is total loyalty. That's what you have to say. People may have choice if you use other words. They may or may not. They may only follow when they know it's good. Otherwise, in bad things they will leave. But arbab wafa is the one who are 100% loyal to your command. Period.
Yeah. They're complete. They won't question it. That's the thing.
They won't. Yeah. Arbab brings that. People who come there with their own will, and they know they have to be loyal to whatever they are told to do, they will do it.
Which goes back to the top, what we were talking about, right?
Shewai Taslim, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shewai Taslim. So I'm actually going to remove this and do a different color just to kind of highlight it. But the idea of Shewai Taslim is then connected down here to Arbab Wafa.
Arbab Wafa, yeah.
Right. So
And there's another word you will come next. That's basically the same, similar kind of a perspective on those people. That's khugar.
Yeah. Khugare ham se thoda sa gila bhi sun le. Khugare hamd. It's a really interesting word because it refers to somebody who's they're always insistent on praising, right? And they're always habituated to that.
Exactly. Who is a habit?
Yeah.
Khugar is a person who has that habit. Hamd is the praise of glorification of the Creator. So one who is habitually praising you, usse thoda sa gila bhi sun le.
You know, it's really interesting, Dr. Saab, because there's and anyone else, you can obviously contribute, but there's a couple of recurring themes here, right? Number one that we see is those, somebody that's habitual in something, right? So we see that aspect, somebody who's constantly doing something. So you see this sense of consistency and constance mentioned in these lines. You also see kisi ko majboor karna, to compel them. There's also a sense of extremity therein, right? And also he uses very strong language there, mazur hona, like you have this sense, this right, this justification to do it. But all of that, the habitualness, the being compelled, being justified, it comes from other senses of very extreme emotions, right? He's saying the story of pain. So the pain you have is not just one incidence, it's many, many incidences, right? That there's sounds of pain coming out from it. And not only that, as you mentioned, the idea of being saze khamosh, the idea where you are ready to go, you have something to say, complaints filled to the brim. And many of you may be used to seeing, these words in English, but now when you compare what the Urdu usage is and you bring it out into the English, it actually helps understand this in a much higher manner. And as you can notice, right, when we're translating these words, or if we're, very, very seldom are we just using one word to translate these, because they're statements. We need a sentence at least to translate them.
Perfect. Yes.
And that's what it comes down to. So we have that, and then we have also another aspect, right? That these are people who they praise consistently, right? They don't question, right? That's the main point. And we mentioned that, and again, they're Arbab Wafa, they're also very loyal. So we see that. And then there's actually something I wanted to mention about this, right? Nala aata hai agar lab pe. This is not a choice, right? So if that sound of pain comes on my lips, basically, if that sound of pain is seeping, right, that it's coming on my lips, then it's not something I can control, because we're already living on such an extremity. We're already living on the edge. I'm feeling this sense of emotion that cannot be contained. And it's coming out of the fact that I've been habitually doing this thing. I haven't questioned. I've been loyal. I praise you, but yet my story has not been heard. I am compelled to say it. I am justified to say it. Because of the fact that I am tuned to this, I've been wanting to say it, I'm filled with it, I cannot restrain myself anymore. Forgive the fact that there is a sound of pain coming out, but it's justified to say what I'm going to say. Oh Allah, from those of you, for those of us who are loyal to you, just listen to what we have to say. We've been praising you, so thoda sa gila bhi sunne. So also listen to some of the complaints that we are going to bring in front of you. Right? And that's how we see it completely encompassed. Right? We see it from all these different perspectives. There was something else that I wanted to mention. Khugare hamd, right? Those who are habitual praisers. This is something interesting because in Arabic, there's a concept of somebody being a maddah, right? A maddah is someone, madaha means to throw dirt. Maddah is actually somebody that is always praising someone, right? Sometimes you'll meet people and they can't do anything but praise you to your face. And when you praise someone too much to their face, right, beyond this is I enjoy this person's company or something like that, you're just praising and praising and praising them, you actually end up soiling their dignity to some degree, right? You end up kind of making them feel uncomfortable, because no one is used to that much praise, because we don't ever praise people beyond what is due for them to be praised with. But somebody who's just doing that constantly, you're in a way throwing dirt at their face. So madah, the one who's always praising, actually is in reference to someone who's throwing dirt in someone's face, that you've done so much praise that your self doesn't even matter. So Khugare Ham brought that to mind, actually, because for those people who are just constantly in a state of praising and not questioning, at least at a human level, right, at an insani level, when we do that to other people, we end up literally soiling them by throwing dirt in their face. You know, and
that may be Arabic, Nihal, but in Farsi, the way this came from, there is no connection to the throwing dirt here.
No, I know there's no connection.
No. I want to just make this clear, because the way this one is used here, this who is habit of any kind.
Yeah.
Okay. Any kind of habit is who, and if God is somebody who does that. And hamd here now classifies as to why. And for hamd, it's always perennial, eternal, forever praise. So there, that concept of really losing its value by overdoing it does not come through in Arabic or in Urdu or Farsi.
Yeah.
That distinction.
Yeah. So here it's different, but I'm just mentioning that how in Arabic it's just interesting. Somebody who's always praising.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Somebody who's just always praising, that it's actually encapsulated therein.
I see.
Yeah. So even then, right, it's like, it actually brings it home, because if you're constantly praising someone or something that you're habitually in obedience to, and you don't really know why you're in obedience to them, are you really showing respect to that person with all your praise?
You know, one thing, one very delicate point, as a poet, I can tell you here, here when he says, "Khugare humse thoda sa gila," thoda sa, a very little, the least bit. He's trying to say that I'm going to give you just a little bit. So if I was to read, "Ay Khuda, shikwa arbab wafa bhi sun le, khugare hamd se thoda sa gila bhi sun le." That's how he would say it. So I mean, all these words, the way he has put them together, the way he is really approaching the subject of making a complaint is unbelievable. I have not seen any other poet have that kind of ability to use the language so beautifully, flowingly, and choosing the words that are so appropriate for what he wants to say. Amazing kind of diction and syntax.
Yeah. So from all of us, right? Thoda sa gila bhi sun le.
Thoda sa.
You know, it's also just, we have complaints as well, and you know, he's using this as a rhetorical tool.
Yeah.
Right?
A little bit of complaint he's trying to say.
Yeah, complaints, just a little.
Yeah, just a little.
But it was really powerful doing this section, because you see like he's literally talking about the nature of people, right? And how the nature of people is being ignored because of the fact of X, Y, and Z. But now that nature is being brought up, now that nature has to be heard, now that nature has to be addressed. But yeah. So that's for today what we had brought up. But if anyone has anything,
we must have other people's comments on this now.
Yeah, exactly. So we just want to hear from people what you have to say, and
discuss. I see Zija is not on. Joined us today, but there may be others that we really want to have few more people give their thoughts.
Assalamu alaikum, this is Saima. I would like to say something about it.
Sure.
That when I read this particular band of this shikwa, it takes me to just like a person. If we take it for the relationship of the people, when we complain, just like with our parents or somebody, we know in our hearts they love us, they will not let us down, but we are just trying to register whatever we are feeling. So it's about like sharing your love, that how you're feeling. I mean, like, you know, the person loves you, that they will do whatever needs to be done for you. But you just like, sometimes you feel like, okay, this, that, small little thing, just Dr. Saab said that thoda sa gila bhi sun le. Just a little bit, kind of like, not to make the other person angry, just to get closer.
Exactly. Last week, I think Nihal had mentioned the word Lord. This is Lord, really.
This is Lord, exactly. This is Lord. just
Articulate.
lard,
mentioned
get
it,
more
yes.
Beautiful
closer
point. Yeah,
to
that is, yeah,
get closer to that relationship, whatever you have.
exactly. I think this you got the answer for Lord word today
Yeah,
by this explanation that the young lady just made. Yes,
yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
yes,
That's really interesting.
that is the Lord approach.
Yeah, it's very true. For those of you that have been attending the last few weeks, like, what are your thoughts? It doesn't have to be about today either. It just has to be about, like, what are your thoughts about all of this? I know a lot of you were at the in-person session we've done, but what are your thoughts? What are your emotions? What's going through your head? I know that.
Are we too slow? Should we cover 2 or 3 months every time, or what?
Yeah, that's what, like, would love to hear from everyone what they have to say. You know, there's a story about Nasruddin, and Nasruddin had basically come to a gathering. I may have mentioned this to you all before about questions, right? That if nobody has questions or comments, either the presenters are not doing well or they're doing very well, right? But there is a story of Nasruddin. He comes to a gathering, and he asks the people there, "Do you know what I'm going to speak about?" And they say, "Yeah, we know what you're going to speak about." He goes, "Great, so what am I doing here?" Assalamu alaikum. He leaves. Then you have, they bring him back, and when they bring him back, he asks again, "Do you know what I'm going to speak about?" And this time they say no. So Nasruddin goes, "You don't know what I'm going to speak about, and I came from all of this distance. I'm leaving," right? And then he's mad and he leaves. So then they bring him back again, and this time the people figure out what they have to do. So Nasruddin asks that, "Do you know what I'm going to speak about?" And now half of the people said yes, and half the people said no. So he said, "Wonderful. The half that knows,
No,
tell the
tell
half
them.
that doesn't know."
Tell those
And then he leaves. So what are your thoughts? So there's right now 11 you've on here. Actually, let me check the Facebook as well, because I know there are people engaging with us there. What do we have here on Facebook?
Evidently not much is there. There is, I think you explained it so well that everybody understood it. So there are no questions. But remember this is said in Musaddas. So that means six verses in each, and it has a certain pattern. This is the after Nazm, this is the easiest form of conveying your message to people, because here, this Kafiya and Radif that one has to deal with as a poet, I can tell you, makes it a little bit easier than if you had to do it in Ghazal form.
Yeah.
Everything has to, and then they have to carry on the same Kafiya and Radif throughout, which is impossible here with 86 verses or 68 verses of Shikwa and Jawab-e-Shikwa. This was the best form that Iqbal chose.
Yeah.
And he has done a tremendous job. I mean, one is the message. The other important thing is really the words and the poetry and the high level of poetic thought that he has used.
Yeah.
Just Saz-e Khamosh by itself is an amazing concept.
Yeah.
Nobody really, it's not easy for people to think about something.
Yeah.
But if you look at flute and you don't even know what it contains in that, and when it starts to sing, then it reveals to you what it had in it all along.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then all these things, words that he has used are amazingly beautiful and unique.
Yeah. I think Sister Sophia wanted to say something, but I wanted to give a shout out to my professor, Dr. Ermin Sinanovic, who's tuning in. So he actually just commented on the Facebook page saying that he's really enjoying it. I did an Islamic thought class with him 2 years ago, roughly. And he's a professor of political science. But thanks for tuning in, Dr. Sinanovic. I really appreciate it.
Yes, Safia.
You're on mute. Sorry.
She's muted. Unmute yourself, Safia.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I had unmuted and then muted again. I just wanted to first thank you very much for this. I find that it's a really nice balance between the history, the tie-in to Quran and Islam, and the poetry kind of just really go together so beautifully. And the inquiry of each of the stanzas and pieces of the poetry. That's it. I just wanted to thank you and say that I'm really enjoying it.
I'm glad to
look at the connection you made in such a subtle way that really we had forgotten to, at least I didn't connect it until she just mentioned it. All of this is consistent with Islamic thought. All of this is under total subservience to our Creator, and yet it's in poetic form. Yet it's in the words that otherwise we use in commonplace, and you might really not have much respect for these individual words, but the way they are put together and the way they are, under the guidance of Islamic message and thought, that is the amazing part. Yes. Really.
I had a quick question for you, actually. You don't, I understand, I mean, do you know Urdu, or is it like not something that you don't, do you speak Urdu at all or anything like that?
You mean this one here?
No, it's a Sophia.
Oh, no, I don't.
So how has it been following it, like following along as somebody who's not like a native Urdu speaker?
It's good. It's clear. And I'm interested in language anyway, and the interpretation of that. So, because like we just spent a lot of time going over nuances of language earlier, and how it can change everything. The context changed vastly once we clarified what one word was doing, right?
Yeah.
So to me, it's even without the language, I'm seeing the distinctions, and it's been great.
So yeah, you may not be able to read Urdu, but do you understand some words when people speak? Any words? No, not at all.
I mean, really.
Okay.
But the context and the way that you are explaining it, it's very evident. So it doesn't even, the language isn't even a barrier.
I see.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. Dr. Saab, I think Simon wanted to, but before Simon's question, there was a question from Dr. Sinanov actually. Could shikwa be translated as appeal instead of a complaint? Is that
no, appeal, no. For appeal, you have to read my appeal. I did the appeal 100 years later after shikwa. That would be a second request. But shikwa, it's really I wouldn't call it a gripe, but I would say complaint is the kind of correct word.
Or a formal complaint or something like that.
Yeah. Or you can say modest and humble kind of a complaint.
Yeah.
Humble.
Sounds good. Yes,
Yeah.
Susanna?
One thing I just wanted to add, that the first शेर है बजा शिकवा तस्लीम में मशहूर है. जैसे डॉक्टर साहब हम कहते हैं ना, हुक्म में हुज्जत नहीं है
जी.
कुरान जैसे कहते हैं जो उसने हुक्म दे दिया है उस पर हम आर्गुमेंट नहीं करते.
बिल्कुल. Yeah, that's the taslim. Perfect taslim. Yes.
Hukum, could you say that again? Hukum kya?
हुक्म में हुज्जत नहीं. When you're or get order from somebody, you don't argue about it. You just fulfill that order.
Yeah, hujjat means you don't need a precedence for it or any excuse for it. That's hujjat. When you have to, hujjat qaim karna means set a precedence.
Yeah.
So here, hukm mein hujjat nahi hoti. When it comes to divine order, you don't need a precedence. You don't need any other explanation for it. An order is an order is an order.
Yes, that's what Quran says for many things, that when they're said there's some order, we have to obey. There is no argument in that. So that's what it's also, this share just takes her there too.
Yes. Yeah. That's it.
Really interesting. Yeah, so he's kind of pushing back against that, right? Saying that now I need to say something. I need to speak.
That's right. Yeah.
To bring up something about this. I can't stay silent anymore.
No, but you see, he's building it up like a orchestra, like a musical instrument. We have had all those tunes and rhymes and everything else, and all those songs have been already put into it. All now it's coming to our lips. We cannot hold it back anymore.
Yeah.
That's why he used that symbolism of Sade Khamosh.
Yeah.
It has been building over the years, and now it's up to our lips.
Yeah. You know, one thing I'm thinking about also the era in which Iqbal was writing, and then the years that come right after this and the years right before it. Dr. Stinanovich, you're reminding me actually of some of the things that we had done in your contemporary Islamic thought class, because it's during like these time periods, right? Before, after, and during, like we'll see the rise of like Sayyid Qutb, we'll see the rise of other folks as well who will be thinking about and questioning like how do we understand the ethos of our faith in the context of this like colonized modern world. And one thing that we had spoken about, sometimes people get very fixated on an idea that someone had brought up, saying, no, that idea is wrong, therefore this person is wrong. But they're asking questions to come to certain answers, right? And sometimes you don't want to be so fixated on what someone is saying word for word, but more so what is it that they're feeling that they're trying to say, which is the point of shikwa. And it's putting together this ethos that it's not specifically, though, yes, Iqbal is using words, right? And he's using words to convey this idea. But at the same time, if someone is going to be closed-minded and just be like, oh, he said this, I don't like what he said. Oh, how dare he complain against God? He goes, look, what is he trying to get you to do, right? Emotions are not zeros and ones. They're not binaries. Thoughts are not binaries. There's always layers. There's stages. You may be in one stage now, you may not be in that stage later. But when we end up intellectually muffling our tradition, where people don't learn logic, they don't learn rhetoric, they don't know about themselves, and especially when they remove emotion from the equation and they want to make it into a pure intellectual exercise, then all of this is going to go straight over their head, right? As they say in Urdu, ek kaan se suna, dusre kaan se udaya usne. And I think that it's important that people keep that in mind, is that we're trying to look at something even beyond it, right? And we also know words can try their best to encompass emotions, and Allama Iqbal has done a wonderful job in doing that. But what we're looking for is that human tendency of being heard is the main point that we want to talk about. But yeah. That's basically that.
Nihal, since you wanted opinions, and I think maybe others can give their opinion also. Maybe we can do at least two band.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do that maybe from next week. Maybe.
Yeah, I think you have given the perspective, the background, and the reasoning and all that. Now, if we can stick to his message only and just expand on it a little bit wherever necessary, then we can do a little bit more justice. Either that, or we don't really have to finish this, because this takes a lifetime to do it. We basically give a little bit of flavoring of this and then a Jawab-e-Shikwa, and then move on to the rest of the Iqbal.
Yeah.
Iqbal has a lot more than just Shikwa and Jawab-e-Shikwa.
Yeah. Actually, maybe we can just look at the next line, just that one. Right? So he's like starts talking about God. Like, yes, we acknowledge that you've always been there. We acknowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has existed, right? We know that Azal is the time before time, right? We know that you have a very ancient presence. So, we recognize that, right? And he gets into it, right? Phool tha zeb chaman par na, right? And you can finish that off and just maybe run with some intro.
That's a beautiful one. You don't want to spoil it for the next visit.
That's what I was wondering. I'm like, yeah.
Here the essence message is that flower was there, but the perfume could not get anywhere without the wind, without the breeze. We are that breeze that took your message. Otherwise, you would never have been able to do it. So that's what he's trying to say in the next one. But it's a beautiful one.
No, beautiful.
He says, your becoming known throughout the universe was dependent upon our being there. If we were not there, nobody would know you.
Yeah.
That's what he says.
Yeah. Was someone going to say something? Sorry.
Somebody's mic was on, but we didn't hear anything. No.
Yeah. But okay.
It's a
Yeah, so go ahead.
Iqbal's poetry.
Who is this? Oh, go ahead. Somebody was trying to say something.
Mr. Seema, or do you have something to say? No, I think her mic is just on. It's okay.
आयशा थी तो मौजूद अजल से ही तेरी ज़ाते कदीम, फूल था ज़ेबे चमन पर न परेशान थी शमीम, शर्त इंसाफ है साहिब अल्ताफ हमीम, बुए गुल फैलती कैसे किस तरह जो होती न नसीम, हमको जमीयत खातिर ये परेशानी थी वरना उम्मत तेरे महबूब की दीवानी थी. Beautiful. That would be a beautiful one. Maybe we can add the next one with it next time so that we can cover a little bit more.
Yeah, so the third stanza is where we're going to basically go at it from. I'm just showing you all from next week. So we'll go into it. I'll prepare a little bit more. So, and then so
I think this will be
some days I think if we talk more, some days we'll discuss more. It doesn't really matter. So inshallah.
Because the next two, band are basically a similar theme. We can cover them both. Inshallah. Inshallah.
Dr. I actually had a question. So we spoke about Allama Iqbal's title, for example, Zarb Kalim. What was the reasoning of Bang Dara?
Reasoning? What do you mean?
Or like, why did he? Yeah, what does Bang Dara actually mean?
Bang is the call. Dara is what makes the caravan move. Bang Dara is the call for the caravan to let's move forward.
Oh.
So whenever the caravan takes a night kind of a station somewhere, next morning, that sound that goes out, let's move, that's called Bang Dara. That is the call to march on. Zarb Kalim is the hit of Moses. Moses' staff hitting the river or the motion and everything parts. That's Zarb Kalim. But the rod of Moses hitting, Zarb is actually the hit, not the staff itself, but the hit that it makes. That's Zarb. Zarb lagana means hitting something. Yeah. Kalim was Moses.
Yeah. He said it means that that it's basically the car that moves the caravan forward, right?
Call, call of the
Or to give you an idea, right? It's
the bell that kind of sounds. Yeah, go ahead.
In a modern context, it's the engine of the train.
No. It's the whistle that it does before it starts to move. That is the bang. You see, in Punjabi we call azan bang. I don't know if anybody understands Punjabi here. When somebody calls an azan, they say bang de rahe.
Oh wow! Okay, interesting.
Yeah, that's what bang is.
I learned a new Punjabi
I don't know
word.
where we picked that in Punjabi and Pahadi Zaban. That bang is for azan.
Wow.
Masiti ch bangaं bhi hum bolniyan. In the
Yes,
masjid.
murge ki bang.
Murge ki bang bhi hai. He's giving you azan to wake up. Yeah.
Murge ki bang. Okay. Wow. Interesting.
Chicken. Yeah. The roosters call in the morning. Yeah. And by the way, they do that in the morning only. In at least in my place where I grew up. But here where I live on Staten Island, there is a rooster in the back with a family in the backyard that crows all day.
Dr. I'm more intrigued at the fact that in Staten Island they have roosters.
They do. Over this particular house behind me, the inhabitants have been there before anybody was here. They are here for about 60, 70, 80 years.
Yeah.
And all other neighbors now have gotten used to it and we protect them. They have all kinds of animals.
Yeah.
And they have enough trees to cover them. And the only couple of homes are bothered by the noise, not the rest because the homes are far apart. But although it's illegal, and yet the authorities do not question them because we all support them to continue with this.
Yeah. Sounds good. Okay, so inshallah from next week,
until we meet again. Inshallah. Okay.
Jazakallah khair, everyone. Inshallah, looking forward to talking to you all next week.
Okay. Thank you, Nihal, for your patience.
Wassalamun ala
alaikum assalam.
Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.